It really was a big thing back then. It's actually surprising how little of it there remains to be, despite the service being up. People were concerned about my health. And they're like, just leave. And he was so upset at that fact. And I really hope that in the future people start to begin looking at this and being like, whoa, this was bad. The term of virtual reality since then has definitely changed. That was their current time, and here we are in the modern day and age, and we're looking back on them and like, if only you knew that we'd be here sitting with a computer in every home. During the last time I left, like during that time period, I've actually had a lot of changes. First off, I'm part of like a big archival community now. I kind of mentioned it briefly on the forum, but I actually host a site and server for like all this old virtual chat programming stuff. And I've been a huge contributor to all that, and it's been kind of wild. Long story short, I ended up checking out this old community of a 3D chat program that it's like the first of its kind, and I kind of got hooked and ended up like grabbing everything I could and archiving it because there's so little information on it. Yeah, and so I now host that.
And what kind of could you explain a little bit? How does it work? What kind of chat system is this?
It's a software that you can chat in a chat box, but you also have this 3D environment you move around in. It's kind of like non-VR chat in the 90s. In a way.
Oh, cool. So, but you actually have like your own avatar, and but you use the chat. Okay, but you don't. There's no voice.
Yeah.
It's just chat, is it?
Yeah, no voice. There was, but it doesn't work anymore.
And how and what exactly are you looking when you archive stuff?
Anything that was worlds.com, like after a while allowed users to create their own worlds. And how they would work is they would be hosted on somebody's site or server, and you would get the URL of a .world file from there and paste it into the client. And there's a lot of servers and places where they're no longer up, and a lot of worlds and files lost. Some that people have worked really hard on over the years, because people just can't pay for the servers, or it's just not worth it, or whatever. And I help archive that stuff, as well as archive the official worlds.com content, including some worlds that nobody even knew existed beforehand. We actually found a huge freaking world that was in works, called MGMBR, which was a world that was officially in collaboration with MGM to create a world based off the Outer Limits. Which was really interesting.
Wow, this is already going beyond anything that anything that I know of. What? Okay, first of all, what are the Outer Limits? That sounds so cool.
I think it's a TV show. I don't know much about it. It looks like a TV show that aired around the 60s and actually got a reboot in the 90s. By MGM.
Oh, okay. So it was a server. It was sort of I don't know. I guess you'd say virtual marketing on their side.
Yeah, it just never got released.
Oh wow. Okay. So
and we ended up finding it hid in the servers
Huh.
somewhere, and we actually got the world
And
files
what
for
did
it and
you find? What
everything.
was on these files?
A lot of worlds that connect to each other that like were like 3D modeled and created like to resemble scenes and places
No
in the
way.
actual show.
Huh. And so let me get this straight. A world consists of a 3D map, essentially, a 3D render of a map.
Essentially, it's like VRML. VRML was a sort of format that it's a virtual. I forgot what it stands for, but it's like a virtual like location where there are these objects and models and all of these combined in one file, and that was accessible via the
Hmm.
web. It's essentially
Okay.
like that. You have a world, and with this world, you have rooms. And in these rooms, you can place objects in them, and you can have portals in these rooms that can link up to other rooms in the world. And you can connect them together and make a really cool and interesting experience, especially because it's a 90s software. It it's kind of cool to explore through it.
Yeah, it's surprisingly advanced for something that came out in the 90s.
It really was. In fact, it had a lot of partnership and leadership involved. I feel like I'm trying to market you at Worlds
I
right
mean, it. Yeah.
It really was a big thing back then. It's actually surprising how little of it there remains to be, despite the service being
Hmm.
up still to this day. Um, because it was very big during the late '90s, before like the .com crash. It was big. It had people backing it up like Hanson, David Bowie. It had IBM. All these big known companies kind of back then, and like celebrities were like backing it up. There's two different Bowie worlds officially you download. It was that big of a thing. It had a huge player base, and then it kind of like when the .com crash happened, it just kind of died, but it still
Hmm.
stayed online.
Okay. Wow. But who's essentially who's running it? Is it worlds.com? Is the company still up?
Yeah, they're still running it. The CEO Thomas Kidron, who has been CEO since 2007, has kind of used it as like a patent trolling technique uh, as of now, and he's still doing that. Which I don't know. Personally, to me, I see that as genius. The dude took some old ass software, decided to turn it into
Yeah.
profit, even if it was used for bad. Hey,
Okay. That's
you gotta
yeah.
live in the
No,
world.
as I said, because that essentially, um, it looks like a very I don't know. It just reminds me a lot of what came after in terms of virtual. I mean, the idea is very. It seems like it's been repeated numerous times with different spin-offs, and one of them, like the first example that came up. Oh, that sounds very similar to Roblox. This virtual world where you can't talk but you can still chat, except without the building element. But that predates Roblox by probably, I don't know, a decade almost. I can't
It
remember.
was first released in 1995, so like that would be almost 10
Yeah.
years.
Wow. That's insane. How does it feel like? Is it has it at all? It doesn't feel dated to use.
It sort of does, but not too much. It's a weird kind of mix, because you have like silly things like it's just today it feels very inefficient. I've actually kind of worked in. I've kind of modded the client a lot because people have asked for features because it's actually still being updated, but the guy who works on it, um, it can only do a limited amount of things. So just even being in the code and understanding it just feels like so inefficient user and like developer wise. That's mostly it.
So what is the content that you're actually trying to
The
archive?
actual .world files, the actual files that actually allowed you to load into the world. Uh,
Oh, okay. So yeah, the rendered worlds and everything that was left back for them there.
yeah,
Okay. And what do these? I mean, what do these files from the '90s look like?
they're just .world files using a generic uh, using like a generic like programming
Hmm.
languages output. So it's like really kind of simple to understand if you actually want to take the time to. And essentially, when you have textures and models and stuff, you put them in like the same folder as the .world file, and they load these textures externally. Like they grab it from whatever folder the world file is in, even across the web. So you don't just have everything like uploaded into one single file. You have the file that actually contains what these objects are, their positions and everything, and then you load the textures and everything else from outside.
Yeah, it's fascinating that something like that this is still up for yeah for so long. Yeah. And what kind of people? I mean, you did you get into this recently?
About around January,
Okay.
actually near the
What
end of
kind of
December.
people? Oh, okay. And who are these sort of what would you say, World.com archaeologists? Do you have a community?
We have a small community. I have myself, and there's some older members, such as this guy named Jet, who runs his entire archive server of his own. Um, and that's pretty much we're pretty much the biggest archivist of worlds.com content. Uh, so we have like a lot like folders and folders full of stuff. We're pretty much really the only two uploading it. We give access to other people, but we're the only two hosting it. Really, excuse me.
What are some of the, I guess, would you call them relics of the time? I mean, you mentioned this Outer Limits world file. Are there any other important finds that you've found so far?
Um, Worlds was sponsored by both Coke and Pepsi at the same time, which that was
Oh,
interesting.
wow.
There's a Coke World that we found that was kind of hidden. Um,
Mm-hmm.
After we've already known about Pepsi Worlds being around Worlds, which was interesting. I'm pretty sure I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was like China Coca-Cola that they were sponsored by.
Hmm.
We also found there's Worlds Chat Japan, which before the
Hmm.
current Worlds kind of client we have around 1998, they decided to redesign it, and we have that now. Before that, they had what's called Worlds Chat, which had Worlds Chat
Hmm.
Gold, and this was like an older software that ran on like Windows 3.1. And a Japan company wanted some of that. So they had World Chat Japan, and they had a lot of spin offs from that too. That was interesting to find and look into.
Okay, so you actually found the spin-offs as well.
Yeah, we found all we can find so far. Uh, it's some
Okay.
interesting stuff for different types of communities and age ranges, essentially.
I think it's amazing that the internet's only been around for so long, yet we've got years worth of just news and events, cultural phenomenons that are just buried underneath um, old files. So it's really amazing when you come over and see some things. It reminds me a lot of I was looking into the oldest Minecraft server recently.
Minecraft Online.
To be no to be 2T, I think
It's the
that's
oldest
what it
Anarchy
is.
server.
Um, yeah, the oldest Anarchy server, not the, but yeah, and I found its history just amazing. So yeah,
It really is.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's
It's got like so much events. I mean, it's really a test of society if we really think about it.
mm,
If we just had no rules whatsoever, they have like entire like actual like history involving including like wars and stuff
mm.
on a Minecraft server.
Yeah, no, it's insane, and you've got within these wars like gangs, betrayals, legacies, kings, etc. It's just it it's difficult to even describe to people who aren't inside of it or who yeah who just don't know the existence of online communities. What to what extent these events happen. So yeah, it was fascinating to hear that. It's fascinating to hear this too. To know that there were these communities out there that thrived at this point and then just sort of vanished with the times.
It is. I find a huge interest in seeing like observing like how it was back then because there's still a lot kind of saved from that time, just not everything.
Mm.
And seeing how they interacted. Somebody actually found a Google. I think it was like an archive forum post, and it was on like a Google community thing where someone was complaining about Worlds and how when they first joined in, no one was chatting, and when he asked why was no one was chatting, um, and they said because we're in Whispers, Dumbo. And he said, "What's the point of a World's chat program if you don't chat in public?" And they're like, "Just leave." And he was so upset at that fact. And just seeing that, and and it's just interesting to see because like that's how like the community was back then, and it's such it it really archiving data in worlds and bits and pieces from back then is one thing. Actually, seeing how it was like back then in the communities is a totally new experience
Mm.
because you got these people from back then that just had had a way they acted, had a way they experienced it. It was like that was their current time, and here we are in the modern day and age, and we're looking back on them and like, if only you knew that we'd be here sitting with a computer in every home that could power like 50 different uh, moon landing missions.
Yeah, that yeah no the advancement of technology is something that I think people take for granted very easily, and to see that like the advancements we've made in the last 10 even 5 years is so grand that you keep on looking at the future for and you think like what's going to happen just around the corner. But I definitely think we are living in a golden age of just consumer technology where things just keep getting better at an exponential rate. So it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's both scary and fascinating. And as you said, I mean the yeah, looking back at how communities, I often look back on our own forum and at older forums, and there's just so much knowledge. There's so much things that happened, and it's surprising how the smallest details sometimes give you the biggest insights on what life was like back then.
I don't delve into that hole is going to lead me down freaking embarrassment lane.
Hey, well, I mean, like we if we look back at our past and we're embarrassed, and that just means we've grown. I think. Um, I don't know.
I guess that could be a way to look at it.
Well, no, I yeah. What I was saying is, I'm glad you're doing okay, and this world thing looks pretty interesting. Um, uh, and as you've sort of mentioned, like you and I definitely have a mixed past, especially on the forum and MTVB. And I don't think all of it's bad. I think a lot of it is actually quite good. You were one of the early members on the forum, and you came from. Did you come straight from Roblox? Is that right?
I did come from Roblox. I actually came into the forum because you were doing that Photoshop thread,
Yeah.
And my my best friend Mario joked about and they're just adding me in bed with Fluttershy, and he linked me and said join this forum and look at this thread, and I went ahead and did so, and it just from there.
That was that was a very particular time of the MTBB. Definitely the lawless stage that it was back then was very interesting, and I do have very fond memories of that. Um,
I do
how did
too.
you? Yeah, did you? So but you weren't very active on the forums, were you?
Um, I don't think so for long. It's like after a couple months
Mm.
later when
Mm-hmm.
I was asked to like kind of come back because and try to take part in a forum, and I started becoming. It kind of went from there. I do not remember at all how my active I was, if I would consider that active or not. But I do know
Mm-hmm.
did make some posts from time to time and interact with the forum. Um, it actually got to a point actually at one point where I would definitely consider I would be being active because I was kind of addicted. I don't didn't really have much of another community to go to talk to or much of anything else to do, so I would just constantly check the forum, which I think pretty unhealthy.
Mm. I think the idea of addiction comes up with a lot of members in general. I don't think it's definitely not uncommon. What do you think sort of was the main fuel for this?
Um, if I had to guess, I would say the fact that we were like kind of a close community, and having knowing each other, it kind of I guess it was more of. I mean, you guys all came from like the Roblox MTVB subboard. I mean, why were we spending that much time in there? It comes down to like you guys became a community somewhere else, and it kind of evolved from there. You had your own place. You were able to make your own posts and kind of interact with each other better than you could on Roblox because of its strict moderation in most places. And I think kind of getting that backstory of where everyone came from, like Roblox MTVB subboard. Um, I think that kind of is the reason. I mean, I'll be personally honest with you here. I think that anybody who spent time on the subboards and like anywhere on Roblox kind of didn't have anything to do otherwise.
Sure.
So, seeing as that's my opinion on how I see things, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's why I usually think. Um, we having the similarities of being addicted to the forum kind of makes sense because a lot of people didn't have anything to do, and it was always a topic. There's always a topic. Everybody was kind of like friends, and we were all able to chat with each other and be cool. And that kind of pulls you in because it's a friendly community. Even behind what wrong has happened sometimes, um, in the end, it is a friendly community, and it's pretty welcoming.
That's good to hear. I think definitely in others, and I think you're right. It's no coincidence that the most of us. I think it's surprising. That is true. We were all on Roblox, but the sort of considering the sort of assortments of ages you have on Roblox, it's not just because when you look at the ages that we have on MTVB, it's surprisingly similar within the 3 year gap. While especially now in Roblox, you have people anywhere from like 10-year-olds with a laptop to young teens, to even young adults. I think who have really joined into the uh, clan. So I think it is surprising that we had a lot of things in common, but as you said, a lot of time to spend, which definitely helped and definitely I think contributes to some people being addicted to the forum there. So I think that's a very valuable point there. One thing that I wanted to mention though, so you were introduced from to the forum through Mario,
Yeah,
um, but did you, considering the fact that everyone else on the forum sort of came from the background of movies, TV as TV shows or books, which is sort of the original there, um, how did you sort of fit in?
I did fit in, but at the same time, I did not really feel necessarily excluded because there was, despite the where you guys originated from, um, the topics were vast. It wasn't just movies, TVs, and books on the forum. It was it could be anything because it was a much more uh, understanding like community. You could just like make a post about, hey, here's what I did today, and if it be of interesting, then people will respond, and the topic gets emerged. So it was kind of I don't not much of a movie, TV, or books person, so that's kind of how I kind of guess I could fit in, just
Mm,
conversing, even when it wasn't
definitely, yeah.
best to converse about.
What do you mean?
Sometimes I got a little bit weird. Not gonna lie
Mm.
there.
Well, so we mentioned a little bit about the MTV's golden era, but you've had sort of run-ins which weren't always positive. How did those? I mean, my main question is like, what sort of fueled them at the time? Was there something that you felt sort of the community shift in a certain direction, or or did you shift in a certain direction? What was sort of the some major points that you didn't really enjoy there?
Well, I can tell you straight up
Mm,
here about for example, like the Michael and Cleek
mm,
thing. Um, that disagreement and sort of argument from there.
mm-hmm.
It kind of don't hate me, Michael, if you're listening to this. But I still kind of feel there were still some valid points in there that I've kind of made. It just wasn't all right. Like I guess it mostly stemmed from the fact the forum was being inactive.
Mm,
And there was definitely some feeling of exclusion involved in there, and I felt like um, that I just probably stemmed from that for during that time period. Um, there's I to be honest, I deleted my account over statements so many times I can't remember all the arguments I've had. um, I know plenty of times it was just because I've had a bad day or something or bad time.
mm,
That's probably bad because I was pretty bad with managing my own sort of emotions like that, and like if I've had a bad day, I would kind of sort of take it out on somebody, even if it wasn't the right thing to do. So I know I've gotten a couple arguments from that in times of fights within the forum.
mm-hmm.
Um, I think I was mostly just spoiled.
Well, I mean, yeah, it happens to everyone, I think, and it's definitely a tough thing when you're dealing with um, life life changes. I think it's a tough period in general, that one, for many people. But I do think, yeah, when it came to arguments and account deletion, you definitely hold the number one spot for that there. I
Yay!
I'm and again, I wanted to sort of touch over this topic briefly because I think it's a big question mark for everyone. Well, maybe it isn't, but I mean, well, especially when you come back, I think uh, hopefully now that's changed. But like the question mark is like if if you hold any of the old resentment back to any of the other topics or any of the other four members, because there were like arguments from all types of kind. There was one a heavy one regarding during I think the elections a couple of years ago, and in politics and etc. So how do you feel about those about I don't know those topics in general now?
Politics. I don't really. Uh, it doesn't really matter to me. Simply, political topic. I don't care enough to care about it. So I guess I know I made a joke recently on a post about must resist political debate because I was kidding about how like Harry in the last one mentioned how when I come back I would have something like right to say, like right sided. And I was joking about that, but I've kind of grown out of that personally, and I have no problem with political topics. I do believe there's definitely uh, some good things that can come out of them if they're actually casually conversed with and talked with. I think that's a problem now uh, that it doesn't happen enough.
Yeah, because it has become a very polarizing. Um, I mean, the political scenario right now is it's probably at an all time tense, if that's the right word. It's just
Yeah,
yeah, it's not in a good position for anyone, I think, and yeah, it's difficult to talk about politics now more than ever, I think. Um, like
I definitely
even
agree with
back then we
that.
were saying like, oh, you can't talk about anything right now, but and I'm not saying you can't talk about anything right now, but it's just risky because there are so many things going on, and it's just tense. And by
It's
yeah,
definitely
mm,
it's definitely a topic you have to tiptoe around if you actually want to converse about it,
mm-hmm,
or else it could devolve into madness and begin um, uh, being a problem.
mm-hmm.
You can lose not only just friends, uh, but it's a very touchy topic now.
Mm. How do you remember how it sort of? I mean, uh, do you think people in the future will be looking back at this and saying, "Oh, how what a stupid era of humanity that was. Like, how did these guys not get along? How did we
God, I
not?"
sure hope so.
Because it,
Sucked to be the opposite.
yeah. Or would they look back and say, "Oh yeah, it makes sense considering everything that was happening"?
I I really sincerely hope so. Hope that they look back and think, "Gosh, that was stupid era,"
Mm,
because it really seems like a stupid era for me now.
mm-hmm,
That I can't possibly fathom what would make this seem any better. We've gotten to the point where people are, if you say something that someone else doesn't like, it turns into your, it turns to name calling and just calling these people bad. I mean, the topic of cancel culture is actually like very rampant right now because no matter what opinion you have, it's just it's so negative. The no matter if you mean good or bad or whatever. It's so bad no matter what. They all lump you into the same group. And I really hope that in the future people start to begin looking at this and being like, "Whoa, this was bad. Humanity was falling apart because of this." I'm so glad we're out of that because I do believe that it's definitely a bad time right now.
yeah, definitely. What do you think about cancel culture? Because it was just last week we had like Jenna Marbles on YouTube. And this is just YouTube. I'm sure on Twitter there are plenty of other cancel culture
They're plenty
phenomenons. But
everywhere.
yeah, um, I heard from someone else, from Mario especially, that cancel culture looks worse than it actually is, and the people getting cancelled
It
usually
does.
gain actually in notoriety.
Uh, I guess that's a way to look at it. Here, my personal thought on it is that it's stupid. People are trying to
Mm,
cancel other people for things they said years ago. People don't even know how the other person is like. They probably don't even have done their actions from before, but they're bringing up stuff from back then. Now, if it was like maybe like a recent video or like a recent post or something they recently said, um, and they like, I mean, that's a different story. your you this person said this thing, didn't think twice about it, and they're getting backlash about it because they're someone of popularity and they're here saying something like that. It's a different story when it's into that, but I I don't think cancel culture should be a thing. Because when you start to look back on someone's old stuff, um, and are upset by something and bring it up, it just makes seems bad on you. You're trying to find something to hurt this person about. We all evolve from some place or another. I mean, a couple of years ago on the forum, I was people were concerned about my health. And I have said things that I totally do not agree with now. Now, just because I said in the past, does that mean I get canceled? I should get canceled? No, we all grow up. And the point about it being making getting some notoriety from it, it still hurts them that they have to talk and discuss about something they said like 10 years ago. In the end, especially sometimes mentally, because you have to prepare yourself to say, "Holy crap! I actually said this thing years ago." And people are now bringing it up and noticing it, despite me evolving as a person. Um, it just kind of, holy crap, I said those things at one point. What do I do? People are going to see me as a bad person. It still kind of hurts you that it just hurts you kind of mentally. Even if you do gain some popularity or notoriety from it or whatever, it's it's the trade is not kind of worth it in the end.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it brings up the question: how should people respond to cancel culture? Because I haven't. Essentially, what happens is old stuff comes up, and I think the first thing that most people do is apologize for it. Um, but most of the time, the apology comes at the height of the controversy. It if anything, it just brings things. Well, I guess not at the height, but I mean, it throws everything into the public eye. How do you think people should respond to being cancelled?
Uh, Personally, I would go. Well, here's how I would personally handle it. Um, I would say it's just one thing and saying, uh, I've grown up as a person, and to bring up things in my past that are now irrelevant doesn't help me. That's what I will just say straight up. Because bringing something up in the past doesn't help anyone. I mean, if it's in the past, it's in the past for a reason. And no longer in the present. Um, to I don't, I really just don't think apologizing is something that should be done. I mean, if there are people out there who even part of cancel culture who are trying to cancel people, who have also done some terrible things in the past, but here they are not apologizing because they don't care. They just want to hurt other people in any sort of position. Um, I think apologizing is probably the wrong move, um, not because I don't think they should be sorry for it, but because they've moved on. Why should they be sorry for something they moved on from? Just saying straight up, hey, this is in my past. I've grown up. Stop focusing on it. I'm not that person anymore. Is probably on probably the most honest and straightforward answer that you could give. And I that was personally what I would say. It probably might be not be the best idea, uh, but um, there's it's it's kind of difficult because people have these different mindsets in cancel culture, and no matter what you say, if you're being canceled, there's not much you can say to help prevent anything further from happening from it.
Yeah, I've never seen it actually in practice, but I think that seems like the sensible thing to do because now that I'm actually personally, this is probably the first time that I've realized this, but the way that people are canceling, especially bringing things up from the past, is probably the pettiest way you could go about ruining someone's social standpoint or their
Definitely.
career, because it's like I had to go back to a time when things were completely different to bring up dirt on you and to try and ruin your status. So yeah, no, it is really petty.
It is.
And I'm sure it's yeah, and I'm sure like if this does become a trend, which I've seen, I don't think it will be because I've seen a general outlash against most cancel culture, even though it's still a very prevalent movement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it is dangerous if we do sort of adhere to cancel culture, because what does that mean? Does that mean we start deleting everything that we sort of post about ourselves? Do we limit our social exposure? Um, and that's sort of, I feel that's sort of relevant to what you're doing right now with Worlds, because if everyone sort of deleted their presence after a certain period of time, there would be nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Most of what cancel culture, what they bring up from the past, is around a time period when we actually were more lenient on jokes. It was more about the jokes rather than about whether this offends anybody or not. And I believe we've walked into a sort of time period where people are starting to just um, no matter what the joke is, even if it's taken humorously. Don't get me wrong, jokes that are like racist or sexist or anything like that aren't cool, but at some extent, um, like if they're like something light and it's at least humorous, I feel like it's not that big of a problem, and it's that time most of the things they bring up are from around that time period, were like early 2010s and stuff like that, where we actually laugh at that stuff less than be offended at it or advocate for something. It's just and now we're in this portion of like the human history where we're suddenly like there are people fighting because they don't like a word being said, and they're trying to uh, kind of separate everyone because like you say that joke, that's racist no matter how light the joke is, no matter how someone else, how their race, someone else from that race like thinks that's a funny joke. It's just it's racist now, and it's there's a divide between that time, um, where cancel culture is taking something that's light and applying it to now, and it's kind of an unfair thing because I mean, Disney back then had like were actually kind of racist, like in animation way back in like black and white days. They don't even like delete that stuff. They say, hey, this doesn't actually adhere to our personal beliefs now, and this was in the time period where stuff. And I believe that's actually the right move for Disney because removing history, removing past things over opinions people have now is just it kind of ruins the timeline there because there were different opinions there. You can't just hurt somebody based on something old they say. I definitely do think back then things were definitely taken lightly.
Mm. Yeah, I do think so as well. I think, however, just to look at it on the other side, there are cases not justifying cancel culture, but sort of the beginning of cancel culture, which is to sort of question like a standard that was being set. So I think if there was a standard of racism that was taken lightly back then, um, perhaps in some cases cancel culture, at least in the beginning, I think had a justifiable cause. But as you said, it is different times. It is different. A different viewpoint, definitely.
I believe questioning even um, I do believe that like the first part of what like cancel culture really is, the questioning part is actually the good a good part. Questioning anything you see especially online and with other people and what they say and anything like that. It's definitely a good thing to do like all the time. Be able to make sure that despite this being a joke, is it really okay? Because um, we're all still people. We're all still human. Um, and there's still you still have to think about how other people like perceive things. I guess you don't need to like cater to everyone, but to make sure it's okay, it's good to have that questioning there because you kind of you kind of know you did in your head you have the common sense of what's good and what's bad, and questioning can help determine that based on your viewpoint.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I definitely think so. Um, Going on, I wanted to talk, and do let me know if this at any time gets a little bit too personal. About your health during, as you said, those darker times on the forum, because you gave us a lot of personal info about your life at that time, and I think that got a lot of people worried.
Um,
How did that pan out?
I'm assuming you being like around like the earlier days of MTVB when like um let's say this I'm definitely better. I There was definitely a reason to worry. I'm gonna say that you didn't have to, but I definitely was in a dark time there. Um, uh, and I've kind of, uh, I've bettered myself since then. I've, I'm way better in terms of like mentally and everything now. Because around that time, I took a hit of what's called escaping to the internet for a cure of depression, and that was not good in the slightest. Um, and I've definitely been better. I've grown up, and definitely I've learned from experience too. And being on MTVB at the time, I've definitely talked more personally about like stuff about me because of uh, the issues I had with like the internet at the time. Um, but I'm glad I think people were concerned for me. I guess um, in the slightest.
What do you think the internet has as an effect on depression?
Anonymity and not knowing you can most people type their messages and you don't have to have your real name attached to anything, and you don't have to face someone face to face. You don't have to have. It's not a real life experience here. You're not next to me and we're talking. We're across from like different places, and here we are talking across the internet. Having this sort of distance is a definite help in affecting depression and addiction to internet because you can think about what you say even if you don't respond instantly or in a few seconds over the internet when you're face to face you can have this person punch you or something like that, and having that some people like to abuse it, and that sometimes can kind of stem from depression because here you are, you maybe you don't feel good at all in real life, but here you are on the internet and you can feel mean, you can feel evil, you can feel better, even though if it's not really that feeling you're feeling, but like more of a delusion of the sorts from your internet experience. Um, it's you when you start to take on an online identity, um, no one really knows who you are, and the distance makes you kind of feel power after a while. It makes you feel good. And I think most of the online addiction and depression and stuff like that stems from that.
How do you think people are coping now, where I mean, things are slowly turning back to normal, but I mean, um, for the past couple of months, all that some people have been doing is being on the internet.
Oh yeah, because the
Um,
pandemic.
yeah. What do you think? Do you think we're going to see an effect from that later on?
I definitely think this pandemic has affected maybe people mentally with the internet and everything. But I do believe a way to cope with that is essentially take some time off. Um, go just get off the internet, go do something, be productive. And I think a lot of people are starting to do that. I've seen a lot of posts online about people actually working on some projects they've had, actually getting things done, actually making some cool stuff from the time being in quarantine. Uh, not just because they don't have much else to do, but because they took time away from the internet, and it's good to keep a good balance between um, in this modern era between being on the internet and being actually in real life and enjoying the world. So a good way to understand to cope is realize internet's not all there is. Um, for some, that can be difficult to understand, but I do believe once we're starting to get things back to normal, there will definitely be more people outside, more to get the fresh air and understand that that the inside and the computer is not all there needs to be done, or the phone, or whatever device they have.
One thing, I think we're still in that sort of personal level of territory, so let me know if this crosses any goals. A community that you sort of introduced to the forum on one the thing, which still really interests me, um, is the community of Otherkin. Are you still in any way connected to that?
Nope.
Is this something that you'd like to talk
Last
about?
time I've talked to them
No.
has been like around 2017, and it was because I was
Oh
laughing at
wow.
the fact I thought I was my mom took me through gay conversion therapy. I do.
Your mom. Wait a minute. Your mom took you to gay conversion
That's
therapy.
apparently according to them, which she really didn't. I was hospitalized because of it, I was a deep depression during that time that like actually caused issues,
Hmm.
and I was actually becoming kind of suicidal, and it was an issue. So I was
Hmm.
hospitalized, but they started becoming making rumors because my account was deleted about it,
Right.
and I kind of found it funny seeing that. But that's what they think.
Yeah. No, that's definitely interesting. So at the moment, you're at the head of one of the biggest archives for World.com. Do you think you're going to expand that at any point?
Uh, Definitely. I actually have VRML archives on my site too. I have some active worlds, which
Oh.
actually stemmed from worlds uh, way back in like the 1995. Um, I have I don't have anything Second Life though yet, but I had to have a page for that. And there's also if there's active worlds, VRML, OnLive Traveler. I actually recently started adding files to that on my site, which is simply like a different kind of world, but with VRML. It was interesting.
And VRML, is that virtual reality modeling?
Yeah. No, virtual reality, I think, is like markup language. Um,
Are these worlds and sites like these worlds, are they popular in the internet community?
Not really, actually. The old kind of you have like modern things like VR chat and stuff, which are actually popular, but not many people actually know or care about like old things like worlds.com or these old VRML clients. The community on worlds.com is just actually especially small, uh, and um, every now and then there just happens to be a YouTube video just claiming there's a cult on there that people just love to take and get on for like 5 seconds, get disappointed and leave. So the community is definitely a small one for the actual community for Worlds, and for other things like I'm not sure about Active Worlds. It's still up and running, but other things just that are
Mm-hmm.
old, it just doesn't have much of a community behind it besides what we already have.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that will change once sort of VR technology gets to a point where everyone could use it, or is there
It
something else? Does it not need
it does
VR
not use VR
technology?
technology. There's this guy has made a mod for
Mm-hmm.
Worlds that can use VR, but it's it claims to be VR technology because that was the VR for the time. I think the term virtual reality since then has definitely changed because uh, they at the time they kind of considered it virtual reality because it was virtual and it was a different reality on their screen.
Well, actually, we've covered a lot of ground and we've gone through a lot of topics. How do you feel right now?
I feel accomplished.
That's good to hear. Um, do you have anything you'd like to say to the forum?
Um, uh, you're cool in the end.
Nice.